gentlemen, here we go. So our job is to now take a look at part 2, and that's solving absolute value inequalities. Those of you here on Friday, we did absolute value equations. So we've already discussed that this absolute value is telling us our distance from 0. And we know every time we solve these, every time we set them up, we have to get that absolute value by itself. So any of those plus, minus outside the absolute value brackets, we're still going to have to get rid of those first. So our rules still apply from Friday. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is what you're going to end up seeing. You're eventually going to get the absolute value all by itself. All right, this is what they're going to look like. And you've got this a plus bx or bx plus a, something inside there. And we want to show you guys what you're going to be taking a look at. So if it says we're going to be, our absolute value is going to be less than c spaces, this is an and inequality. And we already said that. If I want to be less than 4 spaces from 0, I have to go towards 0. I make that and inequality. So how are you going to set this up, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I want my absolute value, what's inside there, my a plus bx, I want that to be less than c. So I want to be less than 4. All right, or if you think back to our warm-up activity, we wanted it to be less than 5. But if I go back and look at the other side of it, the other side of the inequality, I want it to be a plus bx to be greater than c. So because they have to go in opposite directions of each other, I need one inequality to stay less than, and need the other inequality to become greater than. That's the only way they're going to go in opposite directions, and that's the only way I'm going to get them both to go towards 0 to be that less than. All right? What's the difference between this first example and this second example, guys?
It's outside of, well, yeah.
It just has that less than or equal to, right? So is it still going to be an and inequality? Am I still going towards 0? Yeah, because I want to be less than c spaces from 0. So we're going to take a plus bx, but this time we're going to be less than or equal to c. So the only difference there is, ladies and gentlemen, is I can actually fill in the bubble. I can use that closed circle. So when it says I want to be less than or equal to 5 spaces from 0, Corbin, that means now when I circle 5, I can actually fill it in because 5 is one of my solutions. All right? That would also mean on the negative side, we'd have a plus bx, and I just realized I don't know if I misspoke or not. Guys, this has to be a negative c over here. I'm sorry, not a positive c. I think I said it, but then I didn't write it. You have to change direction with your negatives there. So I apologize for leaving that negative off on the first one. So you're going to solve with the positive, which is what we did on Friday, right, guys? We solved one equation with positives. We solved one equation with negatives. Here, though, when we go to that negative, we have to change the direction of our sign. Less than is going to become greater than. Here, we want to be more than c spaces from 0, so those are our ors. We see more and or together. And here we're going to have a plus bx is going to be greater than c. And then you're going to put your word or in there. You're actually going to put that in there this time. And then a plus bx is going to have to be less than, because we have to switch our direction, negative c. So every inequality, because they're always going in opposite directions of each other, one's going to have to be greater than, one's going to have to be less than. Positives are going to stay with what we had. Negatives are going to change direction. And so once again, in this fourth example, the only difference is that equal to. So it's still going to make an or inequality. You need them going in opposite directions. So if the positive is going to be greater than, a plus bx is going to be greater than or equal to the positive value. That means my negative has to be less than or equal to. I'm not a big fan of the chart, but I do find that the first year I did it, I didn't like the idea of giving. I'm like, okay, I feel like I just given a chart. I do have some students that when they struggle with it, when we go back to the chart and work through it with some pounds, it does help make some sense to them. So right now, we don't have examples to see. It may not look very friendly, but I think some of you will find it pretty useful here in the next couple of examples. All right, so let's take a look at number 1. We want to solve each absolute value inequality and then graph the solution set on a number line. Now, if you need to, guys, go back to that chart that we just filled out and kind of fill in what we need, or we can stop and think about it. All right, I want to be less than 3 spaces from 0. So that means x minus 4 has to be less than 3, correct? If I want to be less than 3 spaces, I have to be less than 3. So 2, 1, 0. But that means my x minus 4, when I go to that negative side of 0, because it's an absolute value, I have to do the positive side, and I have to do the negative side. What's going to happen at negative 3? Am I still going to be able to keep going less than? When you're at negative 3, if you want to be close to 0, less than 3 spaces from 0, which direction are you going to have to go? You're going to have to go to... At 3, you go this direction, correct? At negative 3, what direction are we going to go? To the right. And so that's going to become greater than. With the negative, guys, what happened to my inequality? It flipped. Is that what we kind of remember about negatives, guys? Is that if we multiply or divide by a negative, does that reverse my inequality? Is the same thing happening here with our absolute values? Yeah, so it's kind of like that rule comes into play too here. All right? But now you have to solve them, so we're going to add 4. So I don't do any graphing until I actually solve. I want x is less than 7.
That's it?
Well, not yet, because I have to solve this side, correct?
Oh.
And I want x to be greater than, what's negative 3 plus 4? 1. Now, I do need you guys to decide, is this an and or is it an or?
It's or.
Well, let's read it out loud. Absolute value of x minus 4 is, what's that symbol there? Less than. Do you hear the word or in there anywhere? What word do we hear? Or close to? And, ladies and gentlemen, can we take this inequality, match it up, and see what type of inequality it's going to be here? Less than. This symbol, both times, is what type of inequality? An and.
It seems like the work is easy. It's like all the steps.
It's the think. Yeah, it's the thinking. That's what gets it hard, is when we make you guys think in math.
I know, but like the work seems easy. It's like all the steps.
Open circles, and I need to be greater than 1, less than 7, so our shading is in between. Any questions, guys? You do have to think. I hate to break it to you. It really isn't like solving an equation in chapter 3 where you blindly undo adding, undo multiplying. You have to stop and think about what that inequality means. And if I want to be less than 3 spaces from 0, I have to be going towards 0. That means they come together to make an and inequality. All right, let's take a look at the second one. I have absolute value of 2x plus 1 minus 3 is greater than or equal to 6. Now, those of you here on Friday are a little bit of an advantage, because what do we know we have to do first and foremost in this problem? What's our very first step have to be? Alex? You have to get the absolute value by itself. So I heard someone say get rid of that 3. I'm subtracting 3, so how do I get rid of it? Add 3. Gentlemen, you 3 are going to leave here in about 2 seconds. If you can't be quiet and quiet. Because if you don't want to pay attention to me, then you need to leave. That's it. So now what I know is I want my distance to be more than or equal to 9 spaces from 0. Remember, this equal to, ladies and gentlemen, the only thing it's going to do is fill in your circles. It doesn't affect really our thinking on anything. I just want to be more than 9 spaces from 0. So if I want to be, and this is good, I've used my hands a lot, it's okay to do that. It's okay to draw a little number line in the margin or have a scrap piece of paper. All right, I'm at 9. I'm at -9. If I want to be more than 9 spaces from 0, what directions am I going to go? I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to go this way. All right? And you can take the time to fill in your circles, but what that's going to do for you, ladies and gentlemen, is when I go to write my inequalities, I know this one is going to be greater than or equal to 9. I can see the direction my inequality needs to point, correct? When we go to write our -1, 2x plus 1. Now I'm giving you guys a couple of things to think of. The negative, use your number line, use our little quick graph there. What direction is our shading going in? What direction is this? That. So what way is my inequality going to point? To the left. You can think of, because it's a negative, our inequality has to reverse. Okay? Or you can just remember, absolute values have to go away from each other. They're always going to travel in opposite directions, so they have to be opposite inequalities. All right? But you're going to want to set these two up first once you get rid of that 3, and then you're going to go through and solve. You can -1, and if you want to -1 at the same time in each inequality, you could do that. And this is 2x is less than -10. You're going to divide by 2. And you could do that on both sides. We're dividing by a +2, so my inequality isn't going to flip. But realize if you divide by a negative, you're going to do that on both of those, so both your inequalities would reverse. Here I get x is greater than or equal to 4. That's my boundary point. My other boundary point is -5. Remember back to absolute values last week, guys. We didn't end up with the same solution, positive and negative. It moves around on that number line. So it's okay to have a +4, but then a -5. So when I go to look at that, I've got, wait, this is +4, sorry guys. We have +4, we have -5. I want to be greater than or equal to 4. So we shade that in. I want to be less than or equal to -5. Shade it and fill that in. And is this going to be written as an or statement or an and statement? Well, what type of graph is that, Lily? Or, so you're going to take your two solutions, I don't know if it'll let me move them closer, and just put the word or between them, okay? On the and one, you're simply going to put the word and. You don't have to write it as one long statement, guys. I'll let you put the word and in there. So right now, what you guys need to do for me is you need to get the on your own done. Remember, I have to record those